to on my Facebook, so y'all to see the link. Y'all feel free to share it. I also will go ahead and let everybody in, and we're going to go ahead and start. And there's connecting. All right, y'all, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Everybody, thank you all for tuning in tonight to the 4th edition of the Spartan Connection series hosted by the Office of Student Activities and Leadership. We have some great panelists for you all tonight. They're NSU alum, and they work in the field of education as administrators. So I'm gonna let them introduce themselves, and we'll start with Chanelle.
Good evening. My name is Chanelle Woods. I am from Suffolk, Virginia. I am currently employed with Suffolk Public Schools. I am a Spring 97 graduate of Norfolk State University, and I am a Legionite, meaning a member of the Marching Spartan Legion, where I still currently serve as the head auxiliary coordinator. And I'm also a Spring 97 initiate of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Delta Epsilon Chapter, NSU.
All right, so we'll go to Joseph.
Good evening, everyone. I am Joseph Eldridge. I am a resident of Baltimore City. Let's see, I was a Spring 2012 graduate of Norfolk State University. I am now a principal at Southwest Baltimore Charter School. In Norfolk State University, I was in the Office of Admissions for a little bit. I was in the choir. I did the Mr. NSU pageant, and I guess you name it. I'll find some other things as I think throughout the evening. Yeah, so thank you.
All right, so we'll go to Garen.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Garen Moody. I am a Spring 2010 graduate of Norfolk State University. I am currently principal at Lakeview Elementary School in Portsmouth, Virginia. While at Norfolk State University, I was a member of the NSU Concert Choir, where I was there for 3 years and enjoyed myself there. I was happy to be the first female student conductor of the choir, so that was exciting. I was also initiated into the Delta Epsilon chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated while there in fall 2007. Also, while at Norfolk State University, I was Miss Norfolk State University 2009-2010. So I had a lot of fun while I was there, and I'm excited to be with you all tonight. So thank you.
All right, and then Donnell.
Hey everyone, my name is Donnell Cannon, and I currently serve as the Executive Director of District Transformation and Redesign for Edgecombe County Public Schools in North Carolina. Previously, I was a principal at North Edgecombe High School for about 5.5 years. So I recently transitioned to a new role. I am a 2011 graduate of Norfolk State University. While at Norfolk State, I was a resident assistant, and I crossed 2009 Pi Gamma. So yeah, I'm glad we're here.
All right, y'all. So once again, thank y'all for joining us tonight. I'm really, really excited. So we're gonna go ahead and jump into our questions. So, and anybody can jump in and go first. So the first question is, how long have you been in administration?
I think the one with the shortest amount of years should go first. The rookie. I have been in administration. Earlier we spoke, I said 2 years, but it's been 3 years that I've been in administration, but this is only my second year as a principal.
And then whoever else want to jump in?
Yeah, I was a principal for about 5.5 years at North Edgecombe High School. So after graduating Norfolk State, I moved to North Carolina by way of Teach for America. So I was placed in a high need rural Title I school. Just kind of found a passion for children, found a passion for systems leadership. And so I was accepted to NC State University, North Carolina State University, where I received my master's in school administration. And shortly after, I was placed as a principal.
Yes, I will go next. I have 7 years experience as an administrator. I first served as assistant principal for 5 years at Douglas Park Elementary School here in Portsmouth. Prior to that, I taught for 5 years in Portsmouth. All my experience has been in Portsmouth Public Schools. So I was administrator for 5 years, assistant principal, and then I moved to the middle school level for 1 year as an assistant principal. And then this is my first year right now as principal at Lakeview Elementary School. So this is my 7th year as an administrator. So I'm excited to be a first year principal. So yeah, that's where I am, my 7th year. Thank you.
All right, and then Chanelle.
Okay, I am in my 25th year in education, all with Suffolk Public Schools. I taught for 5 years. I was an assistant principal for 4 years, and this is my 16th year as a principal. My second year as a middle school principal. Most of my years have been on an elementary level, so I'm enjoying the transition. And that's it.
All right. So just a little sidebar, Garen. I used to work at Douglas Park with the Boys and Girls Club a few years ago. I just thought it was cool. Yeah, I was only there for a summer though, but I was there.
Okay.
All right. So our next question is, now that you're all in administration, when you were a student at Norfolk State, did you ever think that you would be in this role that you're in now?
Yes. I would say yes. I remember I always wanted to be a teacher. I had an aunt who was already in education, so she was like my role model. I remember going through my student teaching experience, and we had to develop a portfolio, and one part was a goal sheet. And I remember on that sheet I put I wanted to teach 5 years and then become an assistant principal. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't put anything beyond that because I wasn't thinking about head principalship, but I always knew that I wanted to be a principal because leadership has been a big part of my life. My dad, he was big in leadership, civic league, church, whatever. He was always in charge of something. So I grew up watching that, and I actually got my foundation in leadership through marching band from high school all the way through college. So I say that a lot. Marching band really helped groom me in regards to leadership. So I knew I wanted to do this.
All right, and then whoever else want to jump in?
I'll go next. Quite the contrary for me. No. She had a strong yes. I have a strong no. I actually enrolled at Norfolk State thinking that I was a music media major. I wanted to perform. That's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to perform. And that was that. But then I quickly, after doing a summer working at the Boys and Girls Club, my first summer after my freshman year, I was like, oh, I love this. I love kids. And something I actually loved, like teaching vacation Bible school and stuff like that all growing up. But I really like doing it. So I switched my major to music education. I was like, okay, how about I combine my passion for music with the kids? And so I switched to music education, and I really, found a niche for that. And so I just thought I would be a music teacher forever. But then, of course, you know, teaching led to leadership roles in the school. So as a student at Norfolk State, no, I never thought that one day I would be a principal, you know, well, what, 11 years later. No, I didn't think that. And certainly as time went by as a teacher, I never thought that I would be a principal. Even as an assistant principal, principalship wasn't even in my goal until the last maybe 3 years. I didn't even want to be a head principal because I didn't want that life. You know, but some things change with leadership and, you know, seeing that it could be done and just getting additional training and, you know, and all of that. And so, yeah, but no, as a student, absolutely not.
You want to jump in next?
Yeah, I don't mind. My story is a bit different. Gary has known me since I was like a young enrollee. Well, I guess you do too. When I entered Norfolk State, like I grew up in the South Side of Richmond, Virginia. So I came like after having like some really tough like life experiences. So like school never worked for me. Like grew up in like in condensed poverty. I hadn't known like many people who had gone to college. So I'm first gen, like hadn't known, I was kind of walking in a dark room. But I had a principal in high school. Like we went to a really tough high school. So I was always on the receiving end of like inequity. But I had a principal that like believed in me. So he was just the only person that I like could look to as just kind of this paragon, right? Because I couldn't find that any other place. And so I went to Norfolk State. He told me in his office one day, like, you could go to college. I was like, really, me? Right. But I had like a decent GPA because I played like some football, but I hadn't known like exactly what college you could offer me. Right. Because we hadn't been up close to that experience. So he was the only like person that I had that I could say like, this is what like success looks like in a man of color. So I went on to Norfolk State on chance, right? Didn't have like any idea of like what I wanted to study, what I wanted to do. Hadn't really found a passion. And when I got to school, I just was not ready, right? So like I had to like work 3 times over to like kind of like keep up with other colleagues. And so had some incredible professors that supported me at NSU to kind of help me make the big leaps. But I was introduced to this model called Freedom School. And so I ended up working with Freedom School over the summer. And I was up close to like other kids who experienced, you know, the world in similar ways that I had. So I caught a fire for children, similar to like, you know, what Garen had shared. But I left NSU just on fire for like issues of justice and expanded opportunity and designing society where like more people have expanded sets of outcomes and like could participate and seek their full potential. So, and then my experience as a teacher started to fuel my passion for like system leadership, system redesign for students of the global majority, right? Because I hadn't really thought about myself as like a principal, but like being in front of kids, I also realized that like kids are still on the receiving end of inequity. As a teacher, I didn't really see my like unbridled kind of like power to like shift those systems in as a teacher at the time. I think I'm gonna go back, I'd challenge myself there. But I left teaching with kind of this unbound desire to kind of create that like subversive hope in the world that kind of allows like children to imagine their futures they deserve. And so I knew like I'm going after it, right? Like that's the pathway to like move systems with some velocity so that our kids could see that another world exists and they have folks who are like aggressively like pushing towards equity and freedom so they can live in that world. So it wasn't until I became a teacher that I was like, oh, this is the power of like a system leader. And so I could, you know, see myself in that role.
Okay, and then Joseph?
Sure. I definitely would be along the lines that of Garen's response as well, because I've always wanted to be, I knew I wanted to be in a position where I could make an impact on like multiple people's lives in one day. But I really saw myself as being at a university doing music or something like that. But I realized I started my entry into education. It's so funny how everything stacked up, because my entry into education actually was through a company that was contracted under the Department of Defense, Talent Curve. And with that company, we ended up doing educational counseling for military spouses. So while I was there, I was helping people put together these educational plans, basically like their pathway through college to some sort of certification. And while I was doing that, I was helping them manage this $4,000 grant that they got from the government. And it's a small grant, but as I think about it, it kind of like gave me the skills I needed to lead a school and to kind of deal with the budgetary needs of a school. But then after that, I decided to teach music. And I ended up in Prince George's County teaching music. And anybody who's been a music teacher knows that a music teacher is the heartbeat of the institution. Because we bring in parents, we have to recruit parents, we have to recruit students, we have to get staff members involved, we have to manage relationships. So there is so much, we have to put agendas, we have to do clerical work, our own clerical work. So there's so much that we have to do. And I was doing it so regularly that I felt like being an administrator wouldn't be a difficult thing for me. But I also felt like this sense of feeling of it not being fair with music teachers, because when I would be observed by my principal, I would get highly effective, which is the highest rating, but I never earned it. Every administrator that came into my classroom at every school I had been in would say, I don't know how to observe music. And so one principal actually had me, and I probably shouldn't say this on this YouTube, but you know what? I'm a principal now, so I made it. One principal, actually, assistant principal actually had me sit at his desk and do my own observation scoring, put my evidence in there and everything. And I thought that, most people would appreciate that. My job is easy. I go to work, I come home, but I'm like, if I'm not bettering myself, how am I really sure that I'm providing a good, decent quality program to students and skills, giving them skills that they can use in their life? And I was always obsessed with that. It wasn't about me being a music teacher. It was about giving students an outlet. And that's where I thought my outlet would be. But I felt constricted because of the leadership that I was under. And I'm not speaking bad about any of my former administrators because they did what they knew. I think education as a whole doesn't realize that the arts are core contents. It's just the way it is. But I knew that I would be able to highlight that from a higher position. And so I did try a year as a team lead, really connecting myself to ELA and connecting myself to math so that I could create that like arts integration push at my school. But I fell so in love with leading a team and encouraging adults to really pull the best out of themselves so that they can start to pull the best out of the students, that it just shifted me up into being more interested in going into the leadership pathway of education. And I ended up being a resident principal, and I fell in love with actually leading the school, having my little school to practice on, I guess. I didn't let my babies down though, but I fell in love with that, and it just pushed me here. And I realized that this is how I'm still going to be able to make my end goal, which is to give students a greater outlet and more diverse outlet, not just music, but just to really meet the learner wherever they are, wherever it may be. But it's just a different way that I'm going about doing it. And being in the principal seat is just the beginning of the vision that has been laid out ahead of me.
Okay, cool. Interesting. Everybody has different views on that. Chanelle was the strong yes, and everybody else is kind of like, I had other plans, but you all turned out to be successful in what you're doing, which is great. So the next question is, what do you feel is the most challenging thing about being in administration? And not just COVID related, just in
not
general.
just COVID.
Yeah.
I would say dealing with the unexpected. I'm a planner, so I like to be able to plan things out. I'm going into the classrooms this time. I'm doing this time. I put everything on my calendar, but you have to be flexible, and dealing with the unexpected can be hard at times because it can hinder you from doing things you really want to do or you need to be doing. Also, I would say in this current season with COVID, keeping your staff motivated that's been a challenge because we're dealing with staff shortages, we're dealing with substitute shortages, we're dealing with students in and out because of contact tracing and having to quarantine. So this school year has been very interesting, very different from any year that I've had. And I feel a fatigue that I've never felt before because of that, you know. Um, but I would say those are the challenges, you know, that I see, you know, just having to be flexible. And I tell anybody going into administration or just how long you've been in it, every year you're going to go through something you've never been through before. You're going to have an experience, a situation, something is going to happen that you have never been. And I'm 20 years in the game, and every year there has been something that has happened that I hadn't been through before, that I hadn't experienced, but it makes you stronger.
All right.
I would definitely
Go ahead.
have, oh, sorry. Oh, good. I would definitely have to agree with that flexibility and dealing with that unexpected. And I'm super obsessed with like psychological development and how the mind naturally works. And I think that to add on to that, one of the things it does to principals is it puts us in this constant state of needing to be aware or needing to be on top of things. And I have found just this past summer that it kind of locks you into work. Every vacation I have taken, even down to this, I tried to take a mental health break. And I ended up going into the school at 10 o'clock at night and putting little messages on the teachers' doors just because I wanted to build morale in the building. But the thing about that is we never, well, I'm not gonna say we never, because some people may have mastered it. There are anomalies. But I do feel like one of my biggest struggles is being able to detach and get out of that cycle of problem solving, putting out fires, performing, being out on that stage that we call the hallways, and really allowing myself to be reflective, but not in a reflective way like an individual development plan or reflective way like a principal's, you know, we got to turn in some kind of evaluation, but just to really take the time and detach from everything and enjoy and figure out how I feel about me and my current space. It's not a horrible thing, but it's definitely a challenge.
So to piggyback on Chanelle and on Joseph, I agree with all of that. And so what I was going to say with that question was the biggest challenge is the weight of the school, the weight of everyone's problems becoming your problem, the weight of the school's report card having your name on it, and it's your responsibility. The weight of everything being yours, you know, every problem comes to you, and you have your own problems, and you have nobody to give your problem to. I mean, of course, you might have mentors, you have colleagues, you have, you know, somebody who can pick up the phone and call, but that is your school when you are the head honcho. And, you know, when you are the person in charge. So the weight of it all. And then on top of that, the challenge of not being able to detach, like Joseph said, and then the challenge of trying to keep up morale and trying to, you know, meet the deadlines, like Chanelle mentioned, and trying to always, you know, just be on, you know, on the go all the time. And the weight of all of that is just a challenge. And just trying to detach and not bring the weight of it home is a challenge for administrators. And so I think, I mean, I agree with everything Chanelle and Joseph said. And so all of that is weighty, if that's a word. It's heavy.
That's my word right there.
Weighty.
Weighty. Ever since I became a principal.
Yes.
Ooh, that's weighty.
Yes, it is heavy. It is heavy. It is heavy. It is a heavy load to carry. And sometimes it can be a lonely place. It can be a lonely place. But you know, you have, like I said, you have colleagues, you have people you can connect with. So it doesn't have to be a lonely place, but there are times where you have to just close your door and take a minute because, teachers have their teacher friends, they got people they can vent to. And even sometimes, you may have an assistant principal that you can vent to at times, but sometimes even then you don't even want to put the burden on that person. You just gotta, the weight is yours. And so the weight, that's my response to that question.
Yeah, like I just megaphone all of that. Partly the reason that I that I had to bow out. So I megaphone it, right? Like got all the tabs open all the time, the urgency of now. And I think what I would add different is like, I think COVID has like taught us this too. The principal's role in being an ambidextrous leader, like being a hold up like two moments at one time, right? Like often use this ship in the plane analogy where like you got some people on your ship who's like taping the ship up, like kind of having particular attention to like the maintenance that the ship needs, but the ship is not the primary means of transportation, right? Because on the other end of the ship, like some people got to be building the plane, and the plane got to be like ready to take off before like it crashed, right? So it's like we got to plug holes and keep it up as long as we can. And then there's like this, like, what does the future of our schools look like? So I think principals have this like this importance, right, of like exploiting the present, right? So this idea of like we squeeze every last drop out of like the current school model, right? Whether it's like rote learning, whether it's like kids like discipline needs, whatever, and ensuring we are like taking a hard look at like how kids learn best, right? So what they'll tell you, they're probably incredible instructional leaders, right? They probably know how like learning takes place, when it happens, how it happens, can coach teachers around that. And so like principals have to be attuned to that. And then like you understand all the different factors that like impact learning, right? So like cognition and motivation, identity, like individual variability. So I'm sure Chanelle's been building school models for 20 years, right? In her school, she said they all look different. So to me, she's always like shifting and shifting her pedagogical focuses, right? And shifting her learning needs for students and teachers based on just kind of what they need individually. So it's like one thing we're doing as principals, like we got to explore like what's happening right now in our schools. But then there's this other model, right? Where we're always trying to uncover like what schooling needs to look like and what it needs to be for the young people we're serving. And how do we know that? Like, how do you know that that's what kids need? And then what does your community want for children? And what experiences do children need to have in your school? So like, I'm often telling people like, I'm here presently in this school, but I'm already looking to like what's happening in my school next year, right? How does how do my arrows all like point in the same direction? Like, how does this thing that we do lead to the next phase, the next big leap? So we got to like really interrogate like what our school environment needs to become so that students can reach their like unbridled potential. And all learners, so that all learners are experiencing like high expectations and equitable access to many opportunities. And then how do we give kids exactly the types of pedagogical focuses and instructional focuses that they easily respond to, right? That they like leads to a meaningful lens of engagement. Because we don't do that, then I think like that's the things that slow us down in becoming good principals, right? The good principal knows my data. I know what it's going to look like on my next benchmark. I know what it's going to look like 3 years from now, right? So we got to connect those pieces and be able to attach them to the current moment. But then someone also said this, like helping our teachers understand how do we get there and keep them motivated also in that. And it's a sprint, right? Like, so it's like we run a leg of the race. Principals don't get a chance to say like, oh, let me pass the baton, right? Like you got the next leg too, right? And you got the next leg after that. So it's so I think it's like that whole thing, like keep people motivated, focus on school and learning. Like how do we keep morale high, building culture, thinking about the future, like all the things happen in a principal's world. And so I salute the people who are doing this work, daily, and Chanelle for just 20 years in the game, and y'all for being for NSU and doing this thing the right way.
Yeah, I love it. All right, so our next question, y'all, we have some people on YouTube that are asking questions too, so I'm gonna get to their questions. The next question is, how has things changed since COVID for you all? And I know here in higher ed it's different and it's very difficult. So I'm sure for you all, whose students have been gone for almost a year and a half, 2 years, it's completely different. So how has it changed for you all?
Um,
Oh,
I know the big thing that all of us are dealing with is the learning recovery piece with our students coming in behind and they have these deficits and then they're expected to still learn this. So having, our teachers addressing those deficits as well as still trying to teach them content on grade level, that's been a challenge. The applicant pool has been even more dismal this year when it comes to trying to fill positions. And like I said earlier, with substitutes and bus drivers, it's like there are a lot of different issues that they weren't as bad before, prior to COVID. And I feel like a lot of educators compared to other school years, they're more fatigued right now. We just started. I hear that a lot. I'm tired. And we just hit October. So, and then also trying to ensure parents that their children are safe. We do the best that we can when it comes to social distancing and wearing the mask and making sure that, students are safe, but, that's still a challenge, because not all parents comply. Some send their children to school sick. We've had that and it creates a bigger issue. So COVID has changed the game a lot. And when it comes to the role, our roles, it takes away from what our role is supposed to be, just that one piece, because you have to leave this and go take care of this with contact tracing or go watch the students who need to quarantine before their parents pick them up. When you want to be in the classrooms, you want to be giving feedback, you have this to work on, that to do. So I find myself going home, and normally I try to shut things off when I leave the building, but I go home and I get back on my laptop because there are some things that I couldn't get done during the school day because of just the COVID piece.
I agree 100% with Chanelle, and she hit all the points. COVID has taken over, as it has in a lot of areas and professions. We worry a lot throughout the day about how we're keeping our kids safe in everything we do. We think about, okay, distancing, disinfecting, cleaning. You're always thinking about that. And of course, with the learning gaps, as Chanelle mentioned, that's a big piece. Students are coming in with deficits, and we have to make sure we're meeting those needs, those learning needs more than ever. And then when they have to be out for quarantine, that's putting them behind even more. And so that's a challenge. But I will say, I will make a positive little nugget. I'm proud in Portsmouth, and I'm sure other districts are doing it too. We have an advantage because, last year many districts were virtual. And we have an advantage this year because we are doing what's called a blended learning model. And so we have an advantage because students are now used to virtual learning. And so they have the technology. Portsmouth, I'm proud to say, is now 1-to-1 with all of our students in technology. So every student has a Chromebook. And so now students, if they go out for quarantine, we're able to give them their assignments virtually. And we're able to make sure that they can keep up with their, learning. And then teachers are able to, while they're even in school, we're able to do, some virtual technology, more technology in the classroom, and combine that with the hands-on, learning in the classroom. So we have that blended learning model, which is able to engage them in the classroom and also with that technology if they do have to stay home. So I'm proud of that. And so that is a positive thing, that COVID has kind of helped us progress a little bit, which, we needed to do to get, technology going a little bit more. Our kids kind of needed that. And I am, I'm proud of Portsmouth for that. So I am happy about that. COVID has brought, us a little higher in that area. So, we've encouraged our families to connect a little bit better with technology. And so that's a positive that is brought out, but there are still some challenges. Definitely every day.
Yeah, that was the hardest year of my life, actually. But to answer, I think they did a great job of tackling that like technically. I think like more spiritually, right? I think there's this there's been a and Garen kind of talked about this a little bit, but there's been this like profound shift in this moment, and that moment was actually needed to happen in education, not COVID and like folks like dying, like obviously like heartfelt and send condolences and such, but the moment needed to happen for the institution, because the institution of education in America, like built in like industrialized system, has so many strongholds and has left like education to be so innovation adverse, right? So like we've been stuck in the same mode of learning for years, right? Like walking to schools, it operates in many ways the same way it's operated since many of us on the call like have been sitting in classrooms. And I think for COVID, like we had never seen this level of disruption across our society, and certainly across like the academic institution, right? And so one thing I know is that like nothing changes until people are disturbed, right? Like things don't change until people are disrupted and disturbed. And we think about every movement that has ever happened, that has shifted, like societal paradigms have been because folks were disrupted, right? Collectively. And I think like for us, like that happened. It happened quickly in ways that I think many of us on this call would agree that we wish had never happened, because it just sent us into like this sprint. It was devastating on so many fronts. But we needed it, like, in education, right? We needed to be disturbed. And we kept, like, obviously we had to keep going from one delivery to the next, one delivery to the next, one delivery to the next. So we went to a place where like we stayed in like one delivery mode. And I'm sure folks on the call can agree, like I shifted my model like every 3 weeks, right? Like we were learning so much that I had to continue to like pivot, like aggressively, right? Like, okay, teachers, let's get together. Sorry for what you're about to hear, but that ain't gonna work for the next week, right? But it showed us like how agile like we can actually be in education, right? Like, and we've been like in this stuckness for generations, right? And so we quickly realized that in many ways the blemishes in industrial models, and it shined like there was a light that was shining on like the deep inequities of our system, right? Like Garen talked about it. Like some of our kids didn't have Chromebooks, like this 2021, right? You know what I'm saying? We didn't have online learning platforms. Like teachers had one mode of like pedagogical like moves, right? That were kind of like tethered to the classroom space. And so I think like COVID, I tell folks like there's a bunch of mess on the ground. All of us were in this dark room. Everybody on this call could say like, yeah, it's stuff on the ground. Like we've been saying that. Chanelle, you've been saying that for 20 years, right? Like the floor messy. And COVID, and we've been saying the mess on the floor is kind of like a iconographic for like inequity, right? And so of course we're tripping because we can't see the stuff, but we flick the light and now all of it is like made visible, right? Made visible to policymakers, made visible to system leaders, made visible to, right? It's like, this is what we've been saying. So we were able to kind of shine a light on this like really dark room. And I think for us, like what we've been able to learn and collect is like, I think many of us, we deeply understand now the role of parents, that they play as like a kid's first teacher. Like it's no longer like, hey, just drop the kid off, that sort of thing. Like educators now understand the value of parents and the kids' like learning experience, right? Like it shouldn't be detached from like what's happening at home. I think we now understand the role that community and the world more broadly plays in that learning process. Like we hadn't before, right? We could tell a kid, go grab that thing in your kitchen, we're gonna use the measuring cup today, right? Because that's the only means of like engagement that we had. Because the modes of engagement were not the same, right? Like we had to figure it out. We've learned that there are folks out there that can be very different partners. The folks that know kids in ways that we just don't know. And we have to change the relationship between school and parents. I think that's one big thing. And now someone also said this, we now know the role that like of customization. Like we can customize a student experience in ways that we had never thought about. Like we have Chromebooks, we have new curriculum, kid goes out, cool. Now we're in like hybrid learning. You're gonna go to this, you're gonna access this on Google Classroom, you're gonna pull this document, you're gonna work in this way, while I have these other kids in front of me receiving direct instruction. When you get back from quarantine, though, here's how this is gonna work, right? We've never been able to we've been able to, but we've been unwilling to as a collective institution. So now we can customize in ways. we created like very like portability in our model, right? So like we can move our model from the classroom to this next class because that one needs like to be cleaned. This one doesn't allow like the distance that we need. This kid got to be at home. Teacher does too, right? Like, so we've made the model more portable in ways that we said, no, we can't do that just a year ago. And we did it quickly, right? So we understand learning more broadly. We understand the kids are drivers of their learning, right? Like as a principal at a high school, I couldn't be like, turn your camera on, put your pajamas on, you know, like you at home, right? My jurisdiction doesn't extend that far, right? You know what I'm saying? So we had to like understand just like kids being like self-directors of their learning in many ways. And then it's like this anytime, anywhere approach, like a kid at home, a doctor's appointment, you still gonna learn. Snow day, right? Like it's all happening. So that's kind of, yeah, I think those are some things that I've been able to kind of grab from this moment.
Not much to say after that. It's all of y'all have said the word, taking the words right out of my mouth, honestly. I would say that my thorn for post beginning of COVID. It's no longer the beginning. We can say that for sure. I would say that one thing that has really, really drastically changed is our students' ability to kind of engage with each other. It's new to them being in masks, but they have also spent a lot of time not practicing navigating their emotions in front of people. And so a lot of the things that they would do at home, whereas though school would naturally teach them and socialize them so that they can kind of, navigate, like I said, navigate those emotions. They didn't have that. So I am seeing, I was blessed to inherit a school with a great climate. But I'm also a COVID principal. And so my first year was at the start of COVID. So I came out the gate. I inherited the kingdom in the middle of the battle and had to hop on a horse and keep on going. But it was still great because like everybody else has said, the moment, it kind of gave us the blessing of urgency. We could no longer dilly-dally about what would happen in education. We had to, we were forced to come up with solutions, which is why I love being a principal, because I understand that that's who we are. We are the problem solvers of the world. We are the solution to the world's problems. And for so long, we have thought we were box checkers and data distributors. And that's just not the nature of our occupation. We have always been tasked with developing the youth to be able to take on our positions and therefore lead the world. And so I think that COVID has shown us that our students need us, our parents desperately need us, our communities need us to just feel a sense of purpose. And I think that for me, what I've experienced is that's a blessing for me, because we all have this reignited drive. Now, what I did kind of underestimate was we did so much preparation for this year, trying to have 12 plans, because you don't know what new mandate is going to come out or what new direction we're going to hit in as a district. And I am a charter school, so I do have some liberties, but the district is my LEA. So I'm still attached to Baltimore City Public Schools, and I still must follow their mandates. So it's kind of exhausting to the point where we have felt as a staff, many of us feel like we are at winter break already. That exhaustion that you get the week before winter break. I even talked to somebody, I was like, y'all know this is the Tuesday, the second day of the second day of the week in the first month of school. I just want to tell y'all that we at the beginning. And so, but then out of that, again, the blessing of urgency. I am learning personally about self-care, and the importance is not like optional. It is really not optional. And I stress it to my staff as well. Because even like with the COVID symptoms and the look for as being one symptom, it's like, you got this going on, you need to go home. Go home for the day, handle your business. Now, coverage is a monster. It is a beast. And I dread my 6 a.m. text messages. I really do. I really do. But they are finding new ways to take care of themselves. And what I see benefiting us in the future, we are one of the schools who have really embraced the moment. And we have started in instituting a mass customized learning model in our school already. And so we have even adopted a new learning management system so that students could work along their own path and with regards to the Common Core state standards. So we can address students who are above grade level, students who are below grade level, students who need just that little bit of extra bump. And really monitoring each individual student's development and matriculation throughout our academic program. But I don't think that we would have had the flexibility or the funding, because funding has also awarded us some opportunities. We would not have had it had we not been forced to really look at the urgency of the need for a shift in education.
And I agree with y'all, kind of like what Chanelle said too. When you go home and you still pull your laptop out and start doing stuff, I think COVID kind of pushed us to do it, because now for a while we were working from home. So it's like when you go home, you're still technically working, which back before COVID, once you went home, that was it. We won't pull out no computer. It was done. So I found myself 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I open the computer, like, you do this, and you send an email. So I feel like that's one thing that COVID has done just all over. So our next question would be, whoever wants to jump in first, if you could go back to, well, I can't say go back there because I'm still here. If you could come back to NSU, what is one thing that you would do differently?
I've been thinking about this because I am obsessed with not letting anybody else make the same mistakes that I made. Now, honestly, one thing I was blessed to have done was to take charge of my own academic experience. And I tell people even to this day that this woman on this call, Moody, who was Garen Clark at the time, who I adopted as my mother, she was my counselor. she was my quad director, my mama, and my friend. But connecting myself to Garen and people like that kind of kept me on the straight and narrow, and I was blessed to get my 4 years and get up out of there. But one thing I wish I would have done differently that I don't think that students in education do enough, because they don't know that they can do it, is start to make connections, even in like your junior year with schools. Schools are hiring people to be schools need staff now. And more than ever, really, because the teachers are being so overwhelmed that the teachers are sending in resignation. I hear about not in my school, which is why I work so hard on morale. I tell you, I'm their servant. What you need, I got you. Whatever you need to do this job, I got you. Just come back tomorrow. But at some of my colleague schools, the same is not true. So if I were to go back in time, I would start to reach out in my junior year, take on some roles at the school, just observe some classrooms outside of what they ask us to do in our academic program, and really set myself up to get straight into the classroom, because that was a struggle after I graduated, finding a job. And that's how I ended up with the Department of Defense, the contracted company. But that still wasn't what I wanted to do. And I actually I felt like I had to take it, because I felt like I had no other options. I didn't feel like I was following my passion. And now I'm in the principal seat, and I'm seeing how we need people and we want quality people. And for me as a principal, I want you straight out of your academic program, because I want to mold you. I want to push you. I don't want you to get used to a principal that's letting you be laxed and a little lazy in the classroom, and then come here and have me try to push you and try to have you analyzing student data and try to have you having these student conferences and parent conferences, and you get exhausted really quickly. So you all have a lot of power right now, being in college, to really advocate for yourself early on in your college career, so that you can make the connections you need to work wherever you want to work when you graduate. Because we are getting teachers from New York. I think this new teacher came from Minnesota to my school this year. So we want y'all. We do. Set yourself up, because what's going to happen is I don't want to say not the smart students, but those who do have the connections. That's what I will say. Those who do have the connections will start to snatch up the good schools. quote unquote good schools, the schools where you really want to start out at, because you'll learn a lot. It's a teaching school, the principal's in your classroom, you got people in your classroom, you got a good coaching plan. Those schools are going to get snatched up, and you're going to have to work at some district that's trying to desperately get people. And I'm not down on anybody, because every child needs somebody. But you're early on in your career, you definitely want to be in a teaching school, because you never know. I didn't want to be a principal. I wasn't going to be a principal. And look how it propelled me to be under some individuals who led and pushed me. So that's my soapbox.
I'm going to piggyback. My initial answer to that question, what would I do differently? The answer was going to be nothing, because I want to go back, because adulting is hard. And I just want to go back, and I want to be there, and I want to stay there. Okay. Because I had a ball at NSU, and I just want to go back and stay. Okay. Now, now that I've gotten that out the way, no, I piggyback everything he said. Connect yourselves with some schools early on. There is a young lady that now has already connected with me. She wants to substitute teach. You only need a minimum number of credit hours to substitute teach. Connect yourself with the school district locally. NSU, whether it's Norfolk, Portsmouth, Suffolk, Chesapeake. If you have a vehicle and you can do it and your schedule allows you to, substitute teach, so you can get your feet wet and know what exactly it is you're getting yourselves into, so you know whether you want to do it or not. And you can, see what level you're interested in, what, secondary, elementary, those types of things. And that way you can, connect yourselves with different schools, meet administrators. That way, when it's time to interview, they already kind of know you, and you can set yourselves up that way. That was going to be my, that's what I would have done differently. Because actually, it took me some time to pass my praxis test, because I was in Norfolk State when they changed the rules right in the middle of my time there. Initially, when I got there, you did not have to have the praxis test in order to graduate. Well, midway through my time, they changed the rules and said you have to have your praxis test in order to graduate. So many of us were scrambling, trying to study and take the praxis in order to graduate on time. And I was determined that I was still graduating on time. And that's why I told my child, Joseph, you can do it, because if I did it, you can do it. And you didn't have this mandate in the middle of your time. They telling you before, when you first got here. So you gonna do it. So anyway, I was able to do it. I still had 2 years to get it done, because they changed it 2 years into my program. So anyway, but still, I only had a short amount of time to prepare, but it took me 4 times to pass the praxis. So I had to scramble in the last few months of my senior year to try to find schools that would allow me to student teach. And so I almost didn't walk on time, but my parents weren't having that. My daddy had already prepared the party. Okay. So I had to make sure that I was going to walk on time. And so I had to make sure I had to find connections. And fortunately, God worked it out, and with much prayer and connections. But if I had set myself up ahead of time and just done a little bit more preparation and networked a little bit more, and maybe substituted, or maybe just, done a little bit more networking and researching earlier on in my program, to meet people and just get connected a little bit more to those in the education department with some schools in the area, I may not have had to scramble at the last minute to find somebody who would take me to be my cooperating student teacher. And so that would be my suggestion. I mean, I made it. God did it. But that's right. God did it. But, it just may not have had to be such a challenge for me. So I would definitely connect yourselves to some schools locally. I mean, nothing wrong with Baltimore, North Carolina, but Miss Chanelle's in Suffolk, and I'm in Portsmouth. So if you need somewhere to go, we need substitutes every day. I just had a teacher email me while we on this thing that she's not coming tomorrow. Amen. Amen. Okay.
Oh man, you said a whole lot. I pondered over this question while I was watching students who were quarantining today. As far as my experience, I started to say nothing, just like you said, Garen, because anybody who knows me well, and Mr. Bynum knows me pretty well, they know, they can tell you I love the Lord, I love education, and I love marching band. So when I was at Norfolk State, I was able, when it came to the education and marching band, I was able to do both and grow at both. But I did have a similar experience that you had, Garen, in the middle of my matriculation. They changed. I'm under the National Teachers Exam, the NTE. So in the middle of my time, that's when the praxis was eased in. So we were told if we hadn't passed, I think the first 2 or 3 parts of the NTE, we had to start all over with this new praxis exam. I was like, oh no. And I had passed 2 parts of the NTE. That next testing session was packed because we were not trying to start over. So we had to pass that 3rd part by a certain date, or we had to start over. So by the grace of God, I passed that 3rd part. But I'm familiar with those transitions. But I would say, like you said, connect, substitute teach, learn all you can, even just going in and observing, seeing if you can observe. In this day and time, it's hard because we're not allowing a lot of visitors in the building. So that's kind of hard, but get all of the information and the experiences that you can when it comes to actual like instruction and studying, because student teaching is good, but it doesn't totally prepare you for the classroom. And then learn about, you have Common Core, you have so many different things going on. You never know where you're going to end up. So you need to be familiar with a lot of different, modes of instruction, a lot of different types of curricula, all of that. So just educate yourself and be an active learner, and not just what is being taught in the classroom, while you're matriculating.
And virtual learning is not going away.
Amen.
Yeah, I just have a boring response here. I'm gonna go with the all initial response. I literally just, I don't know if I change anything. Yeah, I think my sum of experiences kind of like just fuel my resilience and kind of fueled who I am. Even thinking it's like a young kid coming out of projects and going to Norfolk State, like I took advantage of what was in front of me, right? I'm grateful. Like it was messy, right? Like, and the road isn't always like clear. You heard that from all the folks on the call, right? Like it was real messy, and the messy place, I think, just like really like prepared me, right? Like fueled the resilience I needed to be here. So I don't know if I'd go back and change it, right? Like I don't want to go change something and then like mess it up what's happening now. So yeah, I haven't changed much.
Okay. And we're coming down to our last 2 questions. And we had one that came on YouTube, but y'all pretty much answered it. It was about COVID, how things were hard. So y'all pretty much answered that. So the last 2 questions is, do you feel that do you feel that it is harder being a person of color in the public school system in this day and age? Do you feel like that it is harder being a person of color in the public school system?
I will say, and this is probably going to be controversial, but I would say not in my district, only because what they need us, and parents now more than ever, it's the parents and the students, but really seeing it in the face of the parents really brings it home. They want to see somebody they can trust, because they are scared. They are afraid of COVID. They are afraid that their child has lost so much learning. Parents are afraid, and then they're most afraid of, was I a good parent last year when my child was home with me? And they have to face that question every single day. And so I think it brings them some comfort. My parents, I've got a school phone just this year, simply so that parents could have direct access to me. And I think that that's what they need. They really need to feel like when they send their child to school, they're sending their child with, not to say that somebody that is not a person of color, would not create a safe environment for students. But I think that it's a little easier to see yourself and to feel safe than it is to see someone else and see their I guess, resume and feel safe.
Okay. Anybody else want to jump in?
I agree with Joseph. Same here. Not in my district. I don't think that's an issue. And I concur with everything he's saying. They need to see people of color to feel safe, to feel supported. I've had comments made to me when I've worked with someone else that was not a person of color, and parents have said, I want to talk to the Black one, for lack of a better statement. I mean, that's what was said. And they said, I want to talk to the Black one. And I didn't like that. And I had to correct that parent and say, she'll support you too. Don't, it's okay. But that's they feel safer sometimes within our community. And so I haven't had that challenge. But I actually enjoy and want to work in our community. And I love working. I've been in Title I schools and in Portsmouth my whole career, and I wouldn't change it. And I love Portsmouth, and I'm dedicated to Portsmouth. And so, yeah, I wouldn't change where I am, but I do feel like our students there need to see us. So I haven't had that challenge.
And I agree as well. There are a lot of us of color in my school district, so I don't see it as a challenge. And like Garen, I've served mostly Title I schools, low socioeconomic, so they feel more comfortable seeing us, so I really don't see that as a challenge where I am. And, like I said, I've been in Suffolk for 25 years, I'm vested. I plan on retiring from Suffolk, but we'll see what God has to say. He may have something else, never know. But yeah, I don't see that as a challenge.
Yeah, so I think I'll just answer this from like the salient parts of my identity, like as a black male. I think 2% of educators in this work out of 4-something million teachers are Black men. So I think, so similar to folks on the call, like I've only worked in Title I schools, or as a principal at a public Title I. And I think like that comes with an invisible tax, right? Like I'm sure everyone on the call like can relate to that, right? It comes with an invisible tax of like leading in schools of color and being a person of color, right? I mean, being a leader of color, a Black man and Black woman. So one, I think like you get this like the compassion fatigue, right? Because you're like, you see babies look like you feel like this sense of like deep responsibility. Like Joseph just said, like my parents are calling me. Joseph, that's not healthy, right? But because the way you want to show up in this work and show up for kids, because of more than just like what is surface, like you're gonna put yourself out there in that way, right? So that's not healthy, but cool. Like, because we do the same thing, right? We know that we go into it. We go into it knowing like that's the cause, right? Like you get the invisible tax of being a counselor. You got to be the mama. They're gonna go to Chanelle for the da-da-da, right? Like you got to be there all fronts. And you're gonna be the first one that runs into kids' trauma, right? And the thing about trauma is like our body doesn't recognize if it's like secondhand trauma or if it's trauma is your own. So your body starts to metabolize in that way too, right? So you carry that with you. Go home, you're tired, like biochemically, like there's something happening in your body that's making you that tired, right? That's transfer of like that, like what kids are experiencing. So I think that's the invisible tax on that end. I think we all share, only because I see y'all head nodding. Secondly, I think there's other tax that comes with like being a Black male. Like I had to like insert myself as like an intellectual. I had to insert myself as like one who could think innovatively about schools, one who could like lead instruction in schools. Because I think when you show up as a Black male, and this might be true for other experiences, but the one I relate to is like, I gotta like, you see me as a disciplinarian, right? You the one to send kids to, right? Like, and I'm like, cool, but that ain't my salient part of my identity in this role. You know what I'm saying? Like there are other like parts of me that I like that I can, what I can offer, right? I can show you that I'm an instructional leader. So I've like spent so much time trying to prove that, right? Like having a chip on my shoulder, like trying to show you I can lead this school to like phenomenal instructional practice, that we can see growth under our leadership, that I can be who you like, the kind of like sit on the other end of like who you require other Black male principals to be, right? You think about all the Black male principals, how we're personified, especially like movies and such, right? We like the lean on me dudes, cool, like part of it. And like, I can love a kid up, I can handle discipline, but also like, I'm really talented in terms of like, how do I help teachers think about instructional practice and how did that at least like transfer in long-term like stimuli for kids, right? So I think that's one that I've been up against.
Being, I want to add to that, being in the position that I'm in a charter school with being able to kind of like structure my own model of schooling regarding staff. I feel like the onus is on me to kind of navigate that weight. And even with my parents having access to me, there's a balancing and a management to that has to happen so they feel supported, but then also so you have sustainability. And so I think that my view has been probably so positively as a Black, I just enjoy being a Black male in education. But I think that it may be a little tilted because I'm also obsessed with mental health. And I'm also obsessed with my own mental health. And I'm always making sure that I'm taking steps and giving myself the equipment I need to be able to dust off those things that I carry. Now, it relieves stress to me to get things done. So sometimes, so I still got to work that off. I got to stop working at home. But I just started leaving my laptop at the job. I don't have it today, which is why I was like, you probably should have bought it home today, but it's all right. I got another little setup and it's working. You can't see what I look like in this living room, but it's working. But yeah, I think that I didn't want to slip into that. I did not want to slip in. I knew I was a strong disciplinarian, but what I wanted to really highlight was I'm not a strong disciplinarian. I understand the mindset of my African-American students. So then my question became, how do I take what I understand about the mindset of African-American students and translate that so that one, I can still have a diverse school, because I believe that our children need to see diversity. We need to be able to be around different cultures. And two, not have our students be act in ignorance towards that kind of diverse school. And three, equip those educators to be able to relate to and therefore kind of push our scholars. So it makes me feel like the job is less heavy, but like Donnell said, that weight, that Black male weight, that solve-all kind of weight, and I didn't grow up as a traditional Black male, so I do have a different view, but that weight is still a very real thing, and it does still exist for many of us African-American males in education.
Okay. Cool. All right. Also, our last question would be, what advice would you give to a current student who is interested in administration?
Grow a thick skin real quick.
You said do what?
Grow a thick skin. Yeah, grow a thick skin, because a lot is going to come at you, parents, and sometimes dealing with the adults that's the hard part. The kids, they're good, but sometimes dealing with the adults, that's the hard part. Be willing to be flexible, and if you really want to make administration your career, challenge yourself to work in or serve in different types of situations. I've served low socioeconomic. I've been up here. I've been in the middle of the road as far as the different types of schools. So my experience is well-rounded, where some they would rather stay. I would rather be over here, and I would rather be over here. But be more well-rounded when it comes to your experience, so you can learn how to serve all different types of populations. In my reflecting, I did a lot of reflecting this summer before I started my 25th year, and what I came up with, I describe myself as a chameleon, because I've served in so many different populations and turnaround situations, and I was a different version of myself. When I reflected, still holding my core values, but I was a different version of myself or what that assignment or what that school needed. And then I moved on to the next one and I was another version of myself. So that's why I say my experience has been well-rounded. So I advise anyone serving different types of populations, always be an active learner. You're going to have to, because administration is totally different from when I got into it 20 years ago. And it's going to be totally different 5 years from now. So you can't just, have tunnel vision. This is the way I want to do it. Nope, that's not going to work, or you're going to frustrate yourself. So those are my points when it comes to, advice I would give an administrator.
I would add to that and say, even with those experiences, get some diverse instructional experiences. Because while we all know that it is unrealistic for us to have all of the answers, the fact of the matter is we need to have a lot of them. And for a lot of people in a lot of different circumstances. And because, like we keep saying, the theme is like flexibility, adaptation, all of that. Because you get so much new stuff on a daily basis, it can be very intimidating. It can be very overwhelming to go in with a lack of knowledge. So I will say, I came out, Garen became an administrator before I really got into the classroom. So I had the blessing of coming out the gate knowing that I would be an administrator in that classroom, because I was coming after Garen. But although I started out wanting to be a music teacher, but I knew that, that once it was clear for me, once I saw that that was the direction that she went in, it was just, you see the vision and it's clear for you where you belong. But still, before I even got into the administrative seat, I was team lead here. I was leading. Do I like leading ELA? Do I like working with the math teacher? Do I like being a special educator? Do I like teaching science? Do I like teaching social studies? What do I know about the standards in our state? What can I do to help a teacher who's struggling, who's just a colleague? Because that's really a difficult relationship that you got to navigate, being able to develop somebody that you're not their boss. And understand it, getting them to understand it, it makes everybody's job easier for us to know how to manage our own individual classrooms. But it's like setting myself up to be in those experiences made administration I'm like, okay, it's something new every day, but I wasn't focusing on this specific skill. I was focusing on adaptability. I was focused on being able to be an adaptive leader and being able to be flexible. And so that skill exists. And I do have a large toolbox. I believe I have a fairly large toolbox because of those. And it may not have been 1 year here, 1 year there where I tried something new, or some things may have lasted for 2 or 3 years. But those experiences really set me up to be, I would even say, a competitive administrator, because y'all know we got to have the best school in our district.
And so I'll piggyback, because in order to do all of those things that he just mentioned, how do you do that? You don't wait for your principal to ask you. You ask them. You have to be a go-getter. You have to say, I want to be on the leadership team. I want to learn. I want to be the data analyst. I want to be the school improvement chairperson. I want to be my grade level chairperson. I want to be the department chairperson. Now, okay, as a first year teacher, you might not be able to be the department chairperson, but if every person on your grade level is new, then maybe you can be the grade level chairperson. Somebody has to step up. So, there may be an instance where they say we need a school, council association person. And because our person retired last year, raise your hand, be the person to step up. Or if there's a club that you want to start, be the innovator in your building. Go to your principal, your assistant principal, and say, I want to lead. I want to be on this team or that team. Don't wait for someone to ask you. You just be the go-getter, and you be the one to step up and say, I want to, I need to, I want to be involved. That way, they will know that you have drive, initiative, and they will get you involved. They will have you on the teams that you need to be on so that you can learn how instruction works. You can learn the data. I was a music teacher, as Joseph was. I knew nothing about, you know, the reading, math, science, and social studies curriculum. I knew nothing about testing. I knew nothing about data as it related to the core content areas. I knew nothing, but I was my school's data analyst. And I learned all of that sitting in our school leadership team meetings. And I knew I had to learn it because I had to drive data. I had to, you know, do all of that for our, after every benchmark test, after SOL testing at the end of the year, I had to do all of that. And so I was fortunate, you know, that my principal pushed me, and she led, you know, had me lead the charge for our team. And I was in those school improvement meetings, and I had to present data to the staff, and I had to break it down and all of that. And so that's how I got my start. And, you know, when we didn't have a data analyst and someone had to step up, I did. And so that's what my challenge to you would be. And I would say that's how you get involved. You know, if you don't know how to do it, that's how you do it. Somebody might not ask you, your principal might not ask. You go and ask.
Yeah, I really just have very little to add because they just covered like anything I'd say. But it's like so the summation of all of that would be like insulate with like really good people, like who are the people already up to the things you want to be up to, right? Again, we talked about like Dr. Bracy. I'm asking questions, right? I want to be a superintendent one day. Like, what do I need to be thinking about? What do I need to be doing? What are other Black men are like who are on a similar path to me? What are other guys who are like already principals, right? And I'm just insulating myself with like just good mentors, and folks who are able to kind of like hold me up and toss a bone even and say like, hey, have you heard about this program? You should apply to it. Because of course I wouldn't have known the path unless like someone had kind of like shown me, because you know, like where do I find it, right? And then the other, it's like similar to everyone has already shared, just like the thing you do should prepare you for the next thing you do. So if you want to be a principal, learn good instruction, learn like how to like live in the data, learn how to like build relationships with adults, learn about like adult like learning, because it's very different than like teaching kids, right? So like and the andragogical piece, right? Like how do teachers learn best, how do adults learn best? That's a big part. So yeah, that's all I add.
All right, y'all. Well, once again, thank y'all for joining us tonight and definitely helping us out for our 4th Spartan Connection series. Thank you everybody for joining, and we will see y'all soon. Panelists, if y'all could just hang back for one quick second.
It would. That's the new NSU. Check that out.
You gotta come check us out. You gotta come check us out. We got a lot going on.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's behind me. That's the library, and I think that's nursing. Yeah.